Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. I hope you guys are doing super well. So welcome to today's video. Today we're going to be talking about what happened to 21-year-old Jessica González Villaseñor. Jessica was this beautiful young woman who had her entire life ahead of her. She had just become a teacher, which was her dream job. She had a beautiful family, wonderful friends, and everyone says that she was just such an amazing person. But then all of a sudden, this guy came into her life that changed everything. It's a really upsetting case, you guys. Like, genuinely, it just makes you so angry, especially just seeing the interviews with the parents and her brothers. It's terrible. I mean, no family should have to go through this, but unfortunately, that's the reality of the world right now. I mean, femicide is so high. It's such a real problem. And hearing cases like this and cases like Fatima and just the cases that I talk about makes you so angry because you're like, when is it going to end? Thankfully, in this case, there was some type of justice towards the end, but it took a lot of work to get there. It took a lot of protesting, a lot of, speaking out, a lot of marches, a lot of threats. I mean, it's just really upsetting. And I do just want to put a trigger warning because we are going to be discussing sexual abuse. We're going to be discussing domestic violence. Yeah, with that, let's jump right in and let's talk about what happened to Jessica. Jessica was born on October 14th, 1999 to her parents Veronica and Martin, and she had two brothers named Cristo and Adan, and the entire family lived together in Morelia, Michoacan. They were an extremely close-knit family. I swear, just watching interviews with them and just looking at what they're posting on Facebook, you can just tell that this family was incredibly close. Like, they loved each other so much. And I was watching this interview with, I believe it was Cristo. No, I believe it was with Adan. And he was talking about how when the pandemic hit, most people were like, oh, like, we're gonna be stuck at home with like our family members and like with our brothers, like, oh, I don't want to be with them. But they were like the complete opposite. Like, they were actually excited to be quarantined together and to have to spend time with each other because that's just how much they loved one another. Cristo and Adan were specifically excited to be spending more time with Jessica because she was the only girl of the family. She was their little sister. Jessica was very family focused and value oriented because her parents always taught her the importance of both. Her family had a rotisserie chicken business, and her parents always did the best to give their children the best childhood possible. Even if they didn't have all the money in the world, they didn't have the nicest cars, the nicest house, anything, they just wanted their kids to live a good life, to get a good education, and to just be good people. Her family says that Jessica had the sweetest smile, and in all the photos she took, she actually does have the sweetest smile ever, and she genuinely looks like just such a sweet girl. Her father says that she would love to sing. She was very social, so she had a lot of friends, and she was also very talkative. So sometimes, like, they would be driving Jessica to school or driving her to work, and she would just be like talking about what she was going to do that day, what she was going to do at night, what she was going to do tomorrow, what she was going to do next week. And her parents would sometimes be like, okay, Jessica, like, yeah, can you keep it quiet? Like, we've heard you talking for like hours already. Like, can you just take it down a notch? But Jessica would continue to talk, continue to sing. And, looking back at it, her parents are like, I mean, now we would give anything to hear her just talking and talking. Jessica would always talk about wanting to do good in the world and change the lives of people for the better. She would actually attend femicide protests in Mexico. So she would go with her friends and with her classmates, and she would go on marches, she would do protests, and she was really active in this community, and she was really adamant about femicides and about how unfair it was and how there needed to be justice and how this needed to stop and how, the men that commit these femicides need to be held accountable and how, sometimes in Mexico things can be kind of swept under the rug. So she was very active in this, and actually just a few months before her murder, she attended a protest for another young woman that had been murdered in Morelia. So she was an activist, and she eventually became a general education education teacher, which was like her dream job. Like she loved to teach, she loved being with students, she loved being with kids. So she was really happy about this. However, this happened during the pandemic when she finally got her own class and her own students. So instead of teaching them in person, which she really wanted to do, she had to teach them over Zoom. So she wasn't really too excited because she wanted to have that like personal connection to her students. But she was like, you know what? I'm going to make the best of it. And on the first day of school, she recorded this video for her new students, and she was just so excited and full of light in this video.
Hola, buenas tardes, soy la maestra Jessie y bueno, quiero decirles, me quiero presentar nuevamente, quiero decirles que estoy muy contenta porque voy a ser su nueva maestra y quiero decirles que les vamos a echar muchas ganas a pesar de lo que estamos viviendo, vamos a tratar de aprender lo más que podamos y bueno, yo les quise hacer este video para que me vieran, para que me conocieran. Entonces, les voy a pedir que al igual que yo, ustedes también hagan un video, que les pidan a sus papis que los graben y que me digan cuál es su nombre, cuál es su color favorito, cuántos años tienen, cuándo cumplen años y para yo conocerlos un poquito mejor, verles su carita y puede ser entre el día de hoy o puede ser hasta mañana. Tienen estos 2 días para mandarme su videito para yo poder conocerlos, verles su carita y bueno, eso es todo. Bye.
She was so excited about teaching her first class and getting to know her students and just starting this new journey. If you go through Jessica's Instagram, you can just see that she seemed very happy. She had lots of friends and family members who supported her, and her Instagram bio said, quote, "The best thing about smiling is that it's contagious," which it is. I mean, her smile is just so beautiful. Like, I swear, just looking at her photos just makes you want to smile as well. Now, while things seem to be going well with her family, her career, and her friendships, the same cannot be said about her love life. So let's talk about it. Jessica was in an on and off, I guess you could call it situationship, with a 19-year-old man named Diego Uric Mañón Melgoza. Now, they had met at a party in 2018, and I believe at this point Jessica was 19 and Diego's 2 years younger than her, so I believe he was 17. So they met at this party, and then soon after they started hanging out, getting to know each other a little bit more. At first, it kind of seemed like this was like a casual fling, but as they started to hang out a little bit more, Jessica started to like him more and more. In the beginning, they actually had to keep this, like, I guess I don't even want to call it a relationship, like just fling a secret from their family. So Diego would hide Jessica from his family, and Jessica also kept this a secret from her parents. Now, some reports state that the family did know who Diego was, but that they just didn't approve of him because they just felt like he wasn't a good guy. However, in other reports and in interviews with Veronica, Jessica's mom, it seems like they didn't know who Diego was, and when his name came up in the investigation, she was kind of shocked about that. So I'm not really sure if the family did know that she was seeing Diego or if it was a secret. But what we do know is that Jessica did confide in her brother Cristo about her situation with Diego. Jessica told her brother that it was probably not possible for her and Diego to have a formal relationship because they came from very different backgrounds, and Diego could be very arrogant and braggy because of that. Because Jessica's family, sold rotisserie chicken for a living, while Diego came from a very wealthy family and lived in one of the wealthiest areas in Morelia. Neighbors of the families have come forward and said that they considered themselves, quote, untouchable. So they were just like a very wealthy family with a lot of power, and Jessica's family was definitely more humble, middle class. That was one aspect of Diego that people did not like, that he was pretty cocky about his family status. Along with that, it was just known by people that Diego was not a very good guy. He had a track record of being mean to girls, calling them these terrible names, and allegedly when he would attend parties, he would often ask people, quote, "Are bitches going to come?" Yeah, that's how he would refer to women. He was also allegedly known to be very abusive in relationships, which we will get into a little bit later. So he was really toxic according to his friends, and he just partied a lot. He bragged about the money. He bragged about always having girls. So, just not a good person. In fact, one time he actually held one of his partners at knife point. He liked having power over women, and he was violent when he would have intimate relationships with them and would just like overpower the girls he was with, since he did have have an athletic build from playing football, and he was really tall, so he could easily overpower a girl. Now, Jessica had previously expressed her want for a formal relationship with Diego, but he always told her no. Like, he didn't want to go public with her, he didn't want to bring her to his family, he didn't want to become boyfriend and girlfriend and like change their Facebook status to that. He honestly just wanted to keep it low key. Now, despite him not wanting to be in a formal relationship with Jessica, he was so possessive over her. So he didn't want to date her, but he didn't want her talking to anybody else. He didn't want her dating anybody else. So it just seemed like he kind of just wanted to have her there for whenever he needed her. And then when he was done with her, he could go back with like the other girls that he was with. Jessica's friends also did not like him. One of her friends said that one time Diego told Jessica, quote, "You're my bitch." And that another time he forced Jessica into the trunk of his car and drove around in circles around the city so that Jessica could realize who's in charge. Like, what on earth? So Diego was just not a good guy, and he thought himself above the rules and thought that he could treat women however he wanted to. Jessica, however, was in love with him. I mean, we can't judge her. We can't blame her. You know, sometimes love blinds you. A lot of Jessica's friends would actually tell her, like, hey, this guy's probably using you. Like, he only uses you for sex, and when you're done, you know, being intimate, then he kind of just like discards you and then moves on to the next girl, and then when he's ready and like wants to, you know, be intimate with you again, he calls you up. So they were telling Jessica, you know, he's basically just using you. So that's what was happening in terms of Jessica's love life. It was definitely not a good situation, and it was something that her friends did not encourage. Now, let's fast forward to September 21st, 2020. That day at around 3:20 p.m., 21-year-old Jessica sent her mom, Veronica, a text message asking if she could go to her friend Renata's house for coffee. Veronica asked her what time she would be back, and Jessica told her that she wouldn't be long and that she would be home at around 8 p.m. Veronica agreed to this plan, and at around 5 p.m., Jessica began getting ready and then was off. As she was leaving her house, her older brother, Adan, asked her, you know, where are you going? And Jessica just like playfully replied, "I'm going out. I don't ask you where you're going when you go out." You know, just like typical sibling talk, kind of just telling him like, mind your business. And because Adan had asked her this question, he was paying attention to what his sister was wearing. And she left the house wearing a light brown sweater, black pants, and black shoes. And she was also carrying her pink purse. Jessica left the house. The afternoon passed, and when 8 p.m. came around, Jessica still wasn't home. Cristo, one of her brothers, called their mom and said, "Hey, Jessica still hasn't come back yet." Now, Veronica tried to not freak out, so she said, "Ay, no pasa nada, ahorita llega," which means, don't worry, she'll be here soon. However, another hour passed, and it was now 9 p.m., and there was still no sign of Jessica, which at this point was starting to get weird because Jessica was never this late. Like, yeah, if she got here at like 8:15 or 8:30, like that could be past, but the fact that it had been an entire hour and she still was not home was really scary for the family, and she would have called her parents to let them know that she was going to be late. That way they wouldn't worry about her. Everyone was really worried at this point. Veronica called her daughter's phone, but the calls were going straight to voicemail, which meant that, you know, maybe her battery had died or that her phone was turned off. Even with that, Veronica was still trying to remain hopeful, and she thought to herself, okay, it's fine, like I'm sure her phone just accidentally died, like she'll call me back soon.
Posteriormente, dan las 8 de la noche, Cristo dando las 8 ya me estaba cuestionando el de, pues no llega Jessica. Y yo todavía incrédula le decía, no pasa nada, ahorita llega. Cristo otra vez me cuestiona y me dice, ya está. Yo todavía le decía, no pasa nada, ahorita llega. Y en ese momento es cuando marco yo a su teléfono. Y es cuando me doy cuenta que su teléfono está apagado. Aún así yo todavía decía, no pasa nada, su teléfono se le descargó, ahorita se comunica conmigo.
But unfortunately, 10 p.m. came around, then 11 p.m., and there was still no sign of Jessica. At this point, her family just knew that something was wrong, so they called Jessica's friend Renata to see, you know, is Jessica still there? Did you guys go somewhere? Like, what is going on? But when Renata picked up the phone, she said that she was not with Jessica and that she actually hadn't seen her for days. So if Jessica wasn't out having coffee with Renata, then who was she with? So the family started calling all of Jessica's friends and all of her family members to come over to the house. That way they could organize themselves of how they were going to go look for Jessica. Some people were going to go look in the streets. Other people were going to look in the hospitals. Some people would go check out like local coffee shops or like, places where Jessica would frequently hang out at. While everyone kind of divided up and searched for Jessica, her parents' job was to go to the police station to report her as missing. Her father, Martin, says that he pulled up to the police station and that he almost crashed into the gate because that's how fast he was going. One of the security guards came out and started yelling at him like, hey, you almost crashed into our gate. And that's when Martin tried to calm him down and was explaining to him like, no, my daughter is missing, like I need you to help. He asked the officer like, hey, can you get in your truck and help me look for her? And the officer agreed, so then he, Martin, and Veronica all went out together to search for Jessica. Martin says that they literally searched every inch of Morelia. Like they were driving for hours and hours and they were going through like every little street that you could think of, just hoping to find any sign of Jessica. Meanwhile, while the parents were doing this, Jessica's brother, Cristo, stayed home in case she returned. While everyone else was out, Cristo managed to get into her computer and onto her WhatsApp, which is like a texting and calling app, so that he could see if there were any clues as to where she could be or who she could be with. Now, the last person to message her on WhatsApp was someone named Jose Luis. Now, Cristo did not recognize the name, so he started looking into his profile and saw that Jose Luis worked for Uber. Jose Luis had messaged Jessica saying, quote, "It was nice to meet you." So of course, Cristo tells his parents about this because he's like, who is this Jose Luis guy? When did Jessica get into an Uber? Like, what is going on? So the parents then tell the police, and that pretty much became the focus of the investigation, looking into this Jose Luis guy. Cristo even went onto Jessica's Facebook account and shared what was happening, about how she was missing and how the family was looking for this man, Jose Luis, because he was the last person to have messaged Jessica. Now, because the family was putting this guy's name out there and his photo, Jose Luis eventually did come forward because he saw that like everyone in town was talking about him, and he came forward and was like, hey, I want to clear my name, like I don't know what's going on, but like ask me anything you want, I will tell you the truth. So police are like, okay, like what happened? Like, how do you know Jessica? Why did you send that message? And he says that he had given Jessica a ride before and that they like started talking. So that's why he messaged her saying like, it was nice meeting you. But that the day Jessica disappeared, he had not seen her. In fact, he says that at the time of Jessica's disappearance, he was giving people other rides and he even showed proof in the Uber app. Police also looked at his car. They looked into his Uber rides to confirm that he was the driver during that time and his alibi checked out. So with that, police cleared Jose Luis and then they were pretty much back to square one. No one knew where Jessica was. That wasn't until a friend of Jessica's came forward. Now, let's call this friend Lola. Lola came forward and said that Jessica had told her that she was secretly going to meet with Diego. The police asked her, okay, do you have Diego's number? How can we find him? And the friend said, yes, I actually do have his number because one time Jessica sent me a screenshot of his WhatsApp profile and his phone number was there. So she tells police, yes, I have his number, but like, let me call him first and ask him if he has seen Jessica. Police agree to this and Lola calls Diego on the spot in front of police. Diego picks up and Lola asks him, have you seen Jessica? And he says yes, that he did see her. Police whisper to Lola, okay, ask him like where and when did he see her? So Lola asked Diego this and he says that he picked Jessica up at her house at around 5 p.m., but that he had plans with another friend that afternoon, so he dropped Jessica off a little bit later. So now with this phone call, Diego has admitted to seeing Jessica the day she disappeared. So now the police and the family knew that Jessica was not with Renata and that she had actually gone to see Diego. The search for Diego was on. Now the family still had hope that maybe she was just having fun with this boy, like maybe they went to a hotel or something like that and simply lost track of time. So while they waited to locate Diego, everyone continued looking for Jessica until it was dark outside. They eventually went back home, slept for like an hour or two, and then right when morning came up, the parents went back out looking for Jessica. The family was able to locate the last location of Jessica's phone, and it was pinging near this like secluded area, which at the time the family did not know was near Diego's house. So family and friends started sharing stories and posts on Facebook, Instagram, everywhere with Diego's photo saying that Jessica was missing and that Diego was the last person to see her and to please, help look for her. That same day, police arrived at Diego's house to search for him and, question him. But that's when they were met with Diego's stepfather, Fernando, instead. Now, Fernando said that he had not seen his son Diego either, and that the only thing he knew was that Diego had left because he was scared that everybody was posting his photo online. Because like I just said, like Cristo, Adan, Jessica's friends, her parents, everybody was posting Diego's photo being like, help us find this guy because he knows where Jessica is. So according to the stepfather, Diego freaked out because everyone was looking at his face and he basically fled. Police asked Fernando, okay, do you know anything about Jessica? Did you see her here? Do you know where she is? And Fernando said that he didn't even know Jessica existed because Diego was already in a relationship with another girl named Camila. So Fernando was like, we have no idea who Jessica is. I don't know if she was here. I don't know nothing about that. And he also added that when police first contacted Diego, which again was through Lola when she called him and was like, hey, did you see Jessica? That after they hung up, Diego called Fernando and told him that he needed a lawyer since he was the last person to see Jessica and he knew that they were going to go after him because of that. Diego admitted to his stepdad that he was intimate with Jessica before he dropped her off at her house, but that was it, that he hadn't seen her since then. Diego also added that he took his car to get a car wash. After this, Diego asked Fernando to take him to his biological dad's house, so they went and Diego got dropped off. So now police were like, okay, maybe Diego was hiding with his biological dad. So they go to the dad's house named Bruno, and Bruno says that he didn't know where Diego was and that they barely even spoke to each other. They only spoke when it was time to give Diego money, and the last time that he saw Diego, he said he was having problems, but he didn't specify about what, and then Diego disappeared. So now, no one knew where Diego was, or most importantly, where Jessica was. Numerous marches led by feminist groups were held to spread the word and bring awareness to her disappearance, but still, days passed with no word or sign of Jessica. Since there was such a widespread sharing of her photo and her missing poster on social media, and because of all the marches being held, authorities definitely felt a lot of pressure from the media and from the family to find Jessica as fast as they could, which of course they should be doing despite the pressure. I mean, they should be looking and they should be turning the world upside down to find this woman. So, as I mentioned, Diego told his stepdad that he took his car to the car wash. Police went to that car wash and sure enough, his car was still there. Diego never returned to pick it up. The workers at the car wash told police, we've been wondering where the owner of this car is because they left their car here. So police are like, okay, at what time and when did Diego come to drop off his car? And that's when the car wash employee said, oh, Diego didn't come to drop off the car. In fact, a girl named Hannah came and dropped off the car for him. Now, we will get into who Hannah is in a little bit, but the employees say that Hannah came, she dropped Diego's car and asked them to do the most detailed cleaning and specifically asked them to make sure that the trunk was absolutely spotless. Hannah really emphasized the trunk to them, which is why the employees remember this. It stood out to them that someone really wanted a deep cleaning of the trunk. So police are like, okay, give us the security footage. We want to see what this girl Hannah looks like. We want to see the car. We want to see everything. So they start reviewing the footage, and that's when they can confirm that a girl did come to drop off the car and then she left. Police continue watching the footage, and that's when they finally see Diego arriving a little bit later to check on the car. So Diego pulls up, he asks the employees if his car is ready, and they said no, so he left. However, before leaving, Diego did a quick inspection of the car and he literally was staring at the trunk and, sticking his head in, looking around, making sure that the car was clean, and then he just disappeared after that, which is why he never returned to pick up the car because he was basically on the run now. So with this footage, police had Diego on camera the day after Jessica disappeared, getting a very deep car cleaning, which was first of all very suspicious, but then second of all, it was also going to help them with the timeline of Jessica's disappearance. Authorities took his car in for testing, and sure enough, blood was found in the trunk, the back seats, and the steering wheel. Now, while detectives waited for DNA tests to come back to see if that blood belonged to Jessica, police went back to Diego's house, but this time they went to go search his room. In his room, they found 2 of his shirts in his dirty laundry hamper, which were damp with blood on them. So they took the shirts in for testing, and again, we're also waiting to see if they were a match to Jessica. Now, when the family heard that blood had been found in Diego's car and on his clothes, the family started to lose hope. At this point, they were still thinking that maybe Jessica had ran off with Diego and that the two of them were like in a hotel somewhere, or maybe they were like somewhere by themselves and that she was still alive and was just like running away with a boy. But when they saw that there was blood his car and on his clothes, that hope started to diminish slowly, and they started to realize that maybe something more serious had happened. Maybe Jessica was injured. So while they waited for the DNA test to come back, marches were still going on. Everything just pointed to Diego, and people were mad that he was hiding and that Jessica was still nowhere to be found. During the search, the family and the public grew outraged when a couple of screenshots of a group chat with Diego and his friends were leaked. These messages make me so freaking angry. It just makes me like, oh, I just hate people like this. And so in this group chat, Diego and his friends were literally making memes about Jessica's disappearance. In one photo, Diego is posing holding a dog, and his friends put a text next to him that said El Mañón, aka him, and then next to the dog they put the text Jessica, all stiff and pale. And then they also added the caption, quote, "This is how I imagine the situation today. Fresh out of the oven." So these friends were just horrible. I mean, they were just acting like this was like a funny situation and making jokes about their friend possibly murdering someone. So his friends are just so insensitive, but these screenshots made a lot of people wonder, did Diego's friends know that he murdered Jessica and were just not reporting it to authorities? So people were just absolutely furious at this and at the fact that Diego was still not found and arrested. The family just wasn't going to rest, and they continued to search for Jessica day and night. They didn't care if they only slept 1 hour. They didn't care if they didn't eat. They didn't care about anything. They just cared about finding Jessica. Now, unfortunately, on September 24th, the family's hope to find Jessica alive was slowly disappearing. When doing a search by foot, Jessica's undergarments and her pants were found. Now, when the family and the police saw this, they knew in their gut that this was a bad sign. And unfortunately, the next day, on September 25th, 2020, the family's worst nightmare became a reality. Jessica's body was found in a wooded and secluded area near Diego's house. She was found naked from the waist down and her shirt pulled up to her shoulders. She was taken for an autopsy to be conducted, and the family was also asked to identify her body. But since it would be too hard for the family to see Jessica in the state that she was in, her brother Cristo volunteered to be the one to identify her. Cristo went to Veronica and was like, "Mom, I don't want you to see Jessica like that. Like, please let me go. I will do the identifying for us." And Veronica was like, "No, mijo, like I have to do it. I'm her mom and I want to hold her hand one last time and say goodbye to her." Cristo told her, "Mama, don't go. You don't need to say goodbye to her. Jessica is still here with us. Her spirit is still here. She's here with everything that we're doing. You don't need to remember your daughter in the way that she's in." So Veronica agreed, and Cristo went to identify his sister's body. He said that it was the worst day of his life and that when he saw Jessica, he just couldn't believe that that was his sister. She was, very inflamed all over her body. She had marks all over her, and it was just truly a disturbing scene for anyone to look at. In her autopsy, it was determined that Jessica died the same day she disappeared. She suffered more than 31 blows throughout her body, on her head, face, neck, abdomen, legs, nose, mouth, back, and she also suffered blows to her private areas. The blows to her head and her face left her disfigured and with brain inflammation. The doctor who performed the autopsy said the blows were most likely made while she was still alive, meaning she felt every single one. The autopsy also revealed that there were signs of sexual abuse. So, the same day that her body was found, a march was held demanding justice for Jessica. Everyone in the streets was protesting, demanding justice for her death, and when everyone learned, about the details of her death, everyone grew even more angry. On September 27th, Jessica's funeral was held. It was a very small ceremony with only around 30 people in attendance, consisting of her closest friends and family members. Now, at this point, it was finally confirmed that the blood on Diego's clothing did indeed belong to Jessica. So that, along with her phone last pinging near his house and her body being found near his house, everything just pointed to Diego. There actually wasn't enough blood from the car to be tested, but again, with the clothes matching Jessica's DNA, that was enough for an arrest warrant to be released against Diego. The search for Diego went on for a few days, but finally on September 30th, 2020, 9 days after Jessica's death, Diego was finally found. He was found hiding in a small hotel in Jalisco and was arrested and placed in preventative prison. The judge gave 4 months for the trial to begin, and Diego was to remain in preventative prison until then, so he was not given bail. There was these images of him released, of him being in custody, and he looked pretty different. At the beginning of the investigation, Diego had long hair, but now he had shaved off his head. With this, authorities were like, yeah, he was definitely trying to hide his identity by cutting his hair, and he just looked different. So police arrested him, but he didn't say anything. The only thing he asked for were for his lawyers. So now that Diego was behind bars, the investigation and the preparations for the trial began. During this time, however, Jessica's family actually began receiving threats from Diego's family via phone and text messages. Despite these threats, Jessica's family was not going to back down, and the marches and the protests continued. They were making sure that their voices were heard and that Jessica got justice no matter what, and they didn't want her case to get cold. During this time, the family leaned a lot on feminist groups for support, and unfortunately, Jessica was part of the growing femicides. In the first 7 months of 2020, 2,240 women were killed in Mexico. Of course, that was only what was reported. Now, of course, the family was happy that Diego was finally caught and that a trial was going to begin, but that still didn't make them feel any better. Cristo said, "We are still full of sadness. We are still destroyed even if they arrested him. We won't get Jessica back." They were also worried that because everybody was sharing his photo so much, maybe Diego would use that as part of his defense. So people were urging everyone to either erase the photos that they had shared of Diego's face or to black out his eyes. That way, Diego's defense team wouldn't be able to claim that his right to the presumption of innocence had been violated due to his image being posted everywhere on social media. So that's why if you look up photos of Diego, sometimes his eyes are blurred, or there's a black, line across his eyes. So yeah, people were starting to erase photos of Diego, but they were still sharing Jessica's story. They were still, doing protests and doing everything to keep the word out there. There was one particular event that stuck out to me, and this is one where Jessica's family organized a presentation by using more than 600 shoes that they had painted red and placed in the historic center of Morelia as a way to bring awareness to the quantity and severity of femicides that are taking away women's lives every single day. Through the red shoes, they wanted to represent how women who are killed by femicide don't get to go home back to their families. It was also meant to show how women, when in the streets or anywhere for that matter, don't feel safe. And it's not fair that women live their lives in constant fear of getting murdered. Now, while the family is doing all of this, Diego is behind bars, and allegedly he was actually being treated pretty good in prison, and he even had a personal cell phone in prison to make phone calls to his friends and to his family. Diego's defense team had attempted numerous tactics to postpone the trial start date, so because of this, it wasn't until 2 years later when the trial finally began in June of 2022. During the trial, Jessica's mother, Veronica, requested protection from authorities out of fear of Diego's parents who were still threatening them, and she feared that they would take retaliation against her and her family for trying to prosecute Diego. Now, again, the family was being threatened, and Diego's father spoke out and said that he would take all necessary actions to free his son. Diego eventually reached a legal team of 12 lawyers, so he had a big team behind him. So, according to prosecutors, this is Diego's perspective from the day Jessica disappeared. Diego was seen on his neighborhood surveillance cameras leaving alone in his car at around 5 p.m. He picks Jessica up, and he returns to his neighborhood with Jessica at around 5:38 p.m. They go to this secluded area near the perimeter of the neighborhood, and then they park the car. During this time, it's believed that Jessica told Diego that she wanted to become official, that she wanted to be boyfriend and girlfriend because she truly loved him. She was ready to make this official, and she was tired of hiding it and just being so silent about it. So she told Diego, I want to be your girlfriend. And apparently Diego did not want this. He got angry and he began attacking Jessica. He began giving her fatal blows to her body, but not before sexually abusing her, which we learned from the autopsy. And then after giving her the fatal blow, Diego wrapped Jessica in a blanket that he had in his car, and then he called two of his friends, KiIIed and then another friend that's also named Diego, but we'll just call him Mark for the sake of the video so we don't get confused. So Diego calls KiIIed and Mark and tells them that they all need to meet up at their usual spot, which was like the outskirts of Diego's neighborhood where they would all meet up to like drink and listen to music. So he told them like, hey, let's meet at our spot. And then he also added that he broke up with his girlfriend Camila and just needed to vent to them. So he told Mark that he would pass for him at his house so that they could meet KiIIed at the spot. When they all finally got to the spot, Diego then told the boys to go to his house and wait for him. So KiIIed and Mark go to Diego's house and they just wait while Diego went to go do some things. So Diego was gone for nearly an hour, and while the boys were waiting, they actually left Diego's house to go to a nearby convenience store to get something to drink and something to eat. While they were at the convenience store, Diego called them like really accelerated, almost yelling at them to come back and to quickly meet him at the spot again. Now, it turns out that while Diego was gone for that hour, he had gone to Home Depot and purchased a hatchet and black trash bags. So a few moments later, KiIIed and Mark arrive at the spot and they park behind Diego. Now, when they got there, Diego was already outside of his car, standing in front of the trunk with it open. Now, for some reason, Diego only asked KiIIed to get out of the car to join him, so Mark stays in the car waiting. Now, while KiIIed is walking to the car, Diego asks him multiple times, "Are you my best friend? Are you my best friend?" To which KiIIed was like, "Dude, yes, I'm your best friend." But at that point, he says that he started to get scared because Diego just looked so serious. Like, his face at that moment just looked like a completely different person. So KiIIed finally approaches Diego's trunk, and that's when Diego moves out of the way, and that's when he shows KiIIed Jessica's wrapped up body in a turquoise blanket. When KiIIed saw this, he was just in complete shock. I mean, he couldn't believe that Diego had killed someone, had killed Jessica, and just had the body in the back of his trunk as if it was nothing. So because he was in so much shock, Mark obviously notices because he's staring at them while waiting in the car, so he gets out and he also looks at Jessica's body as well. Now, the three friends all begin arguing and just pacing back and forth and grabbing their heads out of desperation and just, like thinking of like, what the heck are we gonna do and why did Diego get us involved in this? The two friends also noticed that Diego had scratch marks on his body and that he was acting very nervous, he was acting strange, and that to them it looked like he was on drugs. Diego tried to calm them down and was like, "Hey, if you're my real friend, then you will help me." Now, KiIIed replied and said, "I'm not going to help you with your bullshit." And allegedly, Diego replied and said, "If you don't help me, there's going to be problems." So he was basically threatening his friends to help them get rid of Jessica's body. The friends asked Diego, "Who is this girl that you just murdered?" And Diego replied by saying, "You wouldn't know her. She was no one." So the three of them argue for a little bit more, and then Diego takes out a black trash bag and him and his friends begin putting items inside it. Diego goes to the trunk to take out Jessica's pink handbag and glasses so he can also put those items in the black trash bag. His friends still refuse to help him move Jessica's body, so Diego grabbed Jessica's body by himself. And his friends say that he just picked her up so easily, as if it was nothing. Now, while Diego was carrying Jessica's body, the friends, they just watched in shock as Diego went deep into the woods to leave Jessica's body in the outskirts of his neighborhood. And when he returned back where his friends were, they say that he was calm. He didn't seem nervous because he had just left someone's body. He didn't seem nervous because he had just hidden a body. He looked so calm, and he was even just on his phone scrolling. The only thing he told his friends is that he wanted to go back to his house to shower. So they all went back to Diego's house. They waited for him to shower, and then after he cleaned himself up, guess what they did? Just guess, what would you do? I mean, at first, I don't think any of us would be in this type of situation, but if you were in this type of situation and you just had to help your friend get rid of a body, you probably would go home and maybe cry, maybe you would go and tell the police, maybe you go tell someone. But these people went to a casino. Yeah, they went to a casino, and not only do they go to spend their own money, but Diego actually took 200 pesos from Jessica's purse and then used that to gamble in the casino. It's just absolutely terrible. So they go to the casino, Diego loses all the money, and then afterwards they all leave. They then return to Diego's home, and then they watch a football game. While they were watching a football game, Diego casually told Mark that he hit Jessica on the head with a rock and that's how he killed her. At around 9 p.m., Diego calls a friend of his named Hannah, which is the Hannah that I mentioned earlier that dropped the car off at the car wash. Now, Hannah and Diego were kind of like friends with benefits, so Diego calls Hannah and asks her to meet him at his house because he needed to vent and he was sad about breaking up with Camila. Now, Hannah later testified that Diego was violent with her and abused her psychologically and physically. She still loved him and felt that she couldn't live without him despite them not being in an official relationship. She also added that once while they were being intimate, he tied her with a cable and started hitting her. She told him that she didn't want to do that, but he didn't listen until she began crying, which at that point Diego stopped and apologized. He said he didn't know why he did that. Anyways, Hannah arrives at his house and she said that Diego smelled like alcohol and was saying that he was sad that he broke up with his girlfriend Camila and was just like venting about that. So Hannah thought that him being sad about a breakup was weird because Diego was essentially an fuckboy and didn't really have any feelings with the woman that he would be with. Because as I mentioned, like so many girls have come forward saying that Diego was a horrible person. So for him to be crying about this breakup just like really stood out to Hannah because he wasn't the type to have emotions when it came to women. She also added that when she looked inside Diego's car, she saw a bottle of tequila and that the car was full of mud and grass, and that she also saw a black trash bag along with a pair of woman's heels. Hannah also saw him share a post about Jessica's disappearance on Facebook. To me, seeing Diego post about Jessica's disappearance is just so disgusting. Like I get he was doing it to keep up the ruse and to make it seem like he was innocent, but I just can't believe that he actually shared that on Facebook when in his head he knows that Jessica is not missing and that he killed her. Then at around 1:07, they both leave to get rid of the black trash bag and throw all the items that are still inside his car out the window throughout different locations, like on the side of the streets as they were driving around the city. Then they are seen on camera arriving back at Diego's home at around 2:17 in the morning. Hannah said that she felt threatened to help him get rid of the black trash bag, so that's why she helped him, because it was out of fear. Diego also asked Hannah to hide the hatchet and also hide Jessica's brown sweater in her house while he figured out what to do next, and the sweater and the hatchet were actually later found by authorities and taken as evidence for the trial. Now, in their investigation, they discovered that the hatchet wasn't used. It was still new from Home Depot, but according to Mark, one of the friends that was there, Diego had told him that he just didn't get a chance to use the hatchet, but was planning on cutting up Jessica's body with the hatchet. Now, the day after this is when Diego pretty much just fled. He asked Hannah to take his car to get car washed. She agreed, and at around 11 a.m., cameras capture her dropping Diego's car off alone at the car wash. She said that the last time that she spoke to him was after that, and that he told her, quote, "Today is my last normal day." So the day after Hannah took Diego's car to the car wash, she testified that Mark, one of the friends, called her crying and basically told her everything that had happened. He said that he was scared of Jessica's body being found, but then he actually calmed himself down by saying, quote, "We are in Mexico," basically insinuating that because they're in Mexico, authorities are most likely not going to investigate Jessica's disappearance and that they will get away with it. So that was Hannah, KiIIed's, and Mark's testimony, which was very helpful for the trial because it helped to prove, the prosecution's case of, Diego being the one responsible for doing this. On January 11th, 2023, Diego finally spoke out and he declared himself innocent in front of the judge and said that Jessica's true killer was still out there and that he was behind bars while the real guy got away with it. He also added that he was treated poorly in preventative prison and that the first few days they made him eat in the same place he went to the bathroom. At this point, Diego was like grasping at straws and he even turned on his friend Mark and accused him of murdering Jessica. He said that he was a victim in all of this and that he wasn't even with Jessica the day she was murdered. He said that the last time he actually saw Jessica was in July and that the day she was murdered, he was with another woman who he couldn't share the name of because she was a married woman and did not want to ruin her marriage. So again, this guy is just like saying the most ridiculous things. First, he says that he was with Jessica. Now he's saying that he wasn't with Jessica and that he was with this married woman who like like he can't reveal her identity. And then now he's blaming Jessica's death on his friend Mark. Shortly before Diego's verdict was read, his mother, KiIIed, gave an interview in which she said that she and her family are going through a lot as well and that they also have feelings. She also addressed feminist groups and said that she thought that they were supposed to support women and that 80% of her family are women that consist of nieces, daughters, aunts, etc., and that these feminist groups are only defaming them as women and humiliating them by the lies and the misinformation that they are spreading about Diego. She also added that she said she doesn't understand how they can fight for respect towards women when they have shown the complete opposite to her and her family. She said that her family is very united and hardworking people who love each other and will be there for Diego. And again, I understand a mother's instinct to protect her son and to like want to be there for him, but again, I just feel like eventually you just have to accept like this is the reality of the situation. My son did this. He needs to be punished for it, and that's it. So after Diego's mom came out and gave this interview, people were mad, especially feminist groups. In response to what she had to say about them, they actually hung these large canvases in a busy street that read things like, quote, Diego won't return home because he will go to prison, and, quote, don't say bullshit, KiIIed. So, after a lot of testimonies, expert opinions, and evidence, Diego was found guilty and sentenced to 50 years in prison on January 26, 2023. He also had to pay a $70,000 US fine for damage to Jessica's family, as well as pay for 12 psychological treatment sessions for Jessica's family to help them cope with everything that had just happened. The judge that sentenced him said that he carried out Jessica's murder with cruelty, misogyny, treachery, deceit, and physical brutality. When his verdict was read, Diego spoke directly to Jessica's family. He said, quote, I offer my deepest condolences from the bottom of my heart. I have a younger sister, and I can imagine the pain you have felt in these 2 years. Ma'am, referring to Veronica, I understand that you are looking for a certain type of peace and that I will remain in prison for 50 years. But this cannot be because the real murderer is still free. They cut off my life, my aspirations. I had dreams and everything went wrong. I have a very united family, a mother who taught me values, a father who instilled study in me. I just cannot believe that he said that. I mean, saying that they took away his goals, aspirations, and his life is actually like insane because he did the same thing to Jessica. He literally took away her future, her chance of having a husband, kids, a successful career, a beautiful family, everything. He took everything away. So the fact that he's basically blaming Veronica for cutting off his life and his aspirations is terrible. Now, when the news came to light that Diego was going to be held responsible and was going to be in prison for 50 years, the public was very happy. A celebration march was held and people were celebrating the verdict and screaming, we did it, we did it. Diego was taken down and there were balloons and flowers everywhere. It seemed like justice was served, but unfortunately on November 6th of this year, so just a few weeks ago, Jessica's family was informed that Diego's sentence was reduced from 50 years to now 42 years and 6 months. Now, the judge justified the reduction by arguing that Diego should be allowed to be released from prison before he is 60 years old. That way, he can reintegrate himself into society. Veronica said that if she doesn't do anything about this, then she is telling everyone that she is okay with the judge's reduction. So she and her family will not stay quiet. Despite her not wanting to reopen these wounds and like relive everything again, she knows that she has to do this in order to get this appealed. So she says that they will appeal it and that they have already begun the process to appeal this new sentence. Feminist groups also joined in on this and expressed their anger and shared things on social media like, quote, we urge the competent authorities to reaffirm the initial conviction. Today we say justice again for Jessica Villaseñor. A protest was held and there, Veronica thanked everyone who attended and Jessica's family said to everyone, quote, you have done more than the authorities and if necessary, burn everything. burn everything because Jessica is gone. So as of now, we are just waiting to see what happens next. If the appeal does get approved, and I hope it does. It's just really sad because Jessica had a full life ahead of her and it was just snatched from her by this terrible man. Her father said that shortly before she died, Jessica had actually asked both him and her mother, quote, "If something were to happen to me one day, what would you do?" And Veronica just said, "Ay, hija, I would burn all of Morelia." And her father told her, "Ay, hija, I would simply move sea and land, plain and simple." And when they asked her, "Why are you asking us this?" Jessica said, "No reason, just asking." So now the parents feel like it's really eerie looking back at that conversation that happened literally weeks before she was murdered. On October 14th, 2020, Jessica would have been 22 years old, and her brother shared this beautiful post. He wrote, "Today for your birthday, I would give you a day so you could come back to laugh, be happy, hug, and reunite with our family, to play cards, be with your friends, and so you can pet Chester," which was their dog. "You were always very strict with what kind of gifts you wanted, but today I will give you the most beautiful thing, life. I give you my heart, which now beats next to yours. I miss you so much. I don't know what is next, if we will ever be together again or not, but I do know that in this lifetime, you will be in my heart. Not a day goes by that I don't remember your smile. I miss drinking coffee with you, going for an ice cream, to the movies, singing together, eating sopes for breakfast together. I miss you. Today, you motivate and inspire me to keep fighting." Her family is, of course, just heartbroken that their family isn't complete. They're missing Jessica, and her father says that he is just so grateful for everyone who stood by them fighting, and he just can't believe that his daughter touched the hearts of so many. Something that he said just really stuck out to me. In an interview, he said that he constantly thinks about the day Jessica disappeared. When she left at around 5 p.m., he went out to go walk their dogs, and her brothers were sitting on the couch watching TV. So they were just going on with their normal afternoon while Jessica was with Diego fighting for her life. So Martin says, to think about me just casually walking the dogs while my daughter was fighting for her life just breaks my heart, and it just makes me feel a certain way. He says it makes him feel guilty. It makes him feel bad that he wasn't there to defend his daughter and just save her. A friend of the family was doing an interview, and she said that she never thought that she would be going to a protest for someone that she knew. Because again, Jessica would often go to these protests to help other families, so now her friends and families had to attend her own protest, and it was just a lot for them to take in. So the friend was like, "I just thought that this would never happen, but because of what happened to Jessica and how her family fought so hard, my own daughter is now a little bit safer because there's one less killer on the street. Of course, there are still killers out there that are going to do terrible things, but she's like, at least this one, Diego, is off the streets, and that's one less man to worry about." Rest in peace, Jessica. I am so sorry that this happened to you, and I just want to end the video with a quote from Jessica's mother. She said, quote, "My Jessica, you didn't have anyone to defend you. You were against his brutality and extreme cruelty. In your nails was his DNA. I know you were trying to stop him. It hurts me so much that my hands weren't there to defend you. I know your smile won't come back. We didn't do all of this to bring you back. We did all of this to show you that your life here accomplished a huge mission. There will be more cases, more women killed by misogyny, more mothers left with a blank stare and heartbroken. That's why I can never forget you. If I never forget you, then that means you never really left." And with that, that is what happened to Jessica González Villaseñor. Whew, this was a lot. It's just horrible. I mean, her saying there will be more cases, more women killed by misogyny, more moms heartbroken. It's just such a big reality, and I just don't know what can be done to stop this. One thing that a lot of people point out about this case is, of course, they're not blaming Jessica for what happened to her, but it is important to just not lie to your parents about what you're doing. And I know it's so hard to hear that and to actually listen to that, because of course we were all young at one point. I mean, we were all 20-year-olds who maybe didn't want to tell your parents you were going out with a boy or like going to the club or something. But I just feel like it's so important to be honest with them about who you're seeing and about what you're doing. But all right, you guys, that is pretty much all the information I have for today's video. Definitely let me know what you guys think about this down below, and I will keep you guys posted on what happens. If there's ever any other cases you guys would like me to cover, make sure to leave me a comment down below, and also don't forget to subscribe to my channel, turn on the notifications. And yeah, I think that's pretty much all I have to say. I will see you all in the next video. Bye, guys.